January 15th, 4:47 a.m. The barn's fluorescent lights hummed above the milking parlor, a vibration I felt through my boots on the concrete floor more than heard. Outside, wind whistled through gaps in the century-old siding, rattling the loose boards I'd been meaning to fix since November. The cows shifted in their stanchions, breath steaming in air cold enough to make the metal pipes slick with condensation. I pressed my hand against Bessie's warm flank, reading her body language the way I'd done for 40 years of dawn milkings. She was calm, routine morning. That's when headlights swept across the barn doors. Linda's Lexus. She never came to morning milking, said the smell clung to her hair, but there she was, in her hospital scrubs, walking across frozen mud in her good shoes. Clay followed 3 steps behind, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. She didn't sign, just shoved 2 manila envelopes into my hands. I squinted at the bold print on the first page. Even without my reading glasses, still sitting on the kitchen table where I'd left them, one word jumped out clear as a slap. Incompetent. The paper felt expensive. Heavy stock, the kind lawyers charge by the ounce. I looked up at Linda, then at Clay. My son wouldn't meet my eyes. I tapped the word, incompetent, then pointed at myself with a question on my face. Linda's lips moved fast, too fast for me to read. She knew that. 40 years deaf, and she'd never bothered learning more than basic signs. Please. Thank you. I'm tired. Clay finally lifted his hands. His signing was stiff, reluctant. She says, "You can't manage the farm anymore." Says you're declining. Declining. I was 62, not 90. I delivered 3 calves last week without help, fixed the tractor's hydraulic line with wire and electrical tape, balanced the feed budget down to the penny because grain prices were up 17% and I couldn't afford waste. I signed back. Tell her I'm fine. Clay's hand stayed motionless. He just shook his head and pointed at the second envelope, thicker than the first. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Divorce papers. The barn suddenly felt smaller. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, casting harsh shadows across Linda's face. She looked tired. 3 years of rural medical practice had carved lines around her mouth that hadn't been there when we married. But her eyes were steady, determined. She'd planned this. I flipped through the conservatorship petition, catching phrases even without my glasses. Petitioner's spouse exhibits signs of diminished capacity, unable to hear telephone calls from creditors, frequently confused by written correspondence, lies, careful, legal lies. The smell of silage drifted in from the feed bins, mixing with the warm animal musk of the cows. Bessie shifted her weight, udder still half full. She'd kick if I left her waiting much longer. Cows don't care about legal paperwork. I looked at Clay again, signed, "You knew about this?" His face answered before his hands did. Guilt. Shame. But he signed anyway. She's my mother now. She says it's for your own good. Stepmother. Not mother. But I didn't correct him. Linda pulled out a pen, expensive, silver, the kind doctors carry, and tapped the signature lines on both documents. Her message was clear. Sign. Make this easy. I set the papers down on the milk tank's stainless steel lid. The metal was ice cold against my palms. 40 years I'd run this farm. Hutchins Dairy, 3 generations of morning milkings and evening feedings and sleepless nights during calving season. My grandfather cleared this land with a mule and a plow. My father built the century barn with his own hands, one board at a time. My first wife, Sarah, and I raised Clay here, taught him to walk between these same stanchions, showed him how to read a cow's eyes to know if she was sick or just ornery. And now Linda wanted me to sign it all away because I couldn't hear a phone ring. I picked up her silver pen, felt the weight of it. Quality instrument, probably cost more than a week's worth of grain. Then I set it down and signed to Clay. Tell her no. The farmhouse kitchen smelled like yesterday's coffee, burnt and bitter. Linda sat at the oak table, the same table where Sarah and I used to do the books every Sunday night, with the divorce papers spread out like a battle plan. Clay stood by the window, backlit by weak January sun filtering through frost-covered glass. My reading glasses sat exactly where I'd left them that morning, right next to the sugar bowl, 10 inches from Linda's left hand. She saw me looking at them, saw me reach. She slid them 6 inches to the left, out of my reach. Then she started talking. Fast, animated, her hands gesturing but not signing, making sure I couldn't follow. I tapped the table, hard, 3 times, the universal signal for pay attention. Clay finally turned around. His signing was mechanical. She says the bank called yesterday about the John Deere loan, the $47,000 equipment loan for the spring planter. I knew about the loan. I'd applied for it in December. New planner would cut seating time in half, let me cover all 240 acres before the narrow window closed. Old equipment was breaking down, taking twice as long. Missed the planning window by even a week and the whole season was shot. What about the loan? I signed. Clay's hands hesitated. She filed the conservatorship petition with the bank. They put a hold on all major financial decisions until the court rules. The kitchen went quiet. Not silent. I could feel the old refrigerator's compressor vibrating through the floor, the tick of the wall clock, the creak of the house settling, but quiet in the way that matters, the kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. I looked at Linda, signed slowly, making sure she understood. You blocked my loan? She didn't need Clay to translate that. She nodded. Then her lips moved in 3 words I could read perfectly. For your own good. I stood up, walked to the calendar hanging by the phone, counted forward from January 15th. March 1st was circled in red, the latest possible day to get equipment and still make spring planting work. 72 days away. The ground would still be frozen solid. Linda stood too. She picked up a 3rd envelope I hadn't noticed. Legal letterhead, Grayson Development Corporation. She set it on the table between us. Then she signed, slow, deliberate, the only full sentence she'd ever learned in SL. You have until March 1st to decide. Her lips moved around the rest, but I caught enough. Sign power of attorney. Make this easy, or lose everything. She walked out. Clay followed without looking back. Through the kitchen window, I watched their cars disappear down the gravel drive, leaving 2 sets of tire tracks in the frozen mud. 72 days. The loan application sat on the table next to my reading glasses, right where she'd left them, just out of reach. Red Oak County Bank smelled like floor wax and old carpet, the kind of smell that never changes, year after year. I've been banking here since 1985. Same building, same teller windows, same potted ficus tree in the corner that Sarah used to joke was older than our marriage. Roger Klein, the branch manager, saw me coming through the glass doors. I watched his face change, not much, just a tightening around his eyes, a stiffness in his smile. The way people look when they're about to deliver bad news and want you to know they feel terrible about it. He waved me toward his office. Private conversation. That was never good. The chair across from his desk was the same vinyl one I'd sat in 100 times before. Squeaked the same way, but Roger didn't lean back casual like usual. He sat forward, hands folded on his desk blotter, and spoke slowly, deliberately, like I was a child. Mr. Hutchins, good to see you. Every word exaggerated, mouth wide open. The kind of overcompensation hearing people do when they forget that deaf doesn't mean stupid. I pulled out my phone, typed, just talk normal. I read lips fine when people don't shout. He flushed red, nodded, cleared his throat. Right. Sorry. Listen, about your equipment loan application. I waited. We've got a situation. Legal hold on the account. Conservatorship petition filed by Dr. Hutchins. We can't process any loans over $5,000 until the court makes a determination. I typed, I can manage my own finances. Been doing it 40 years. I know that, Vern. I've seen your books. You run a tight operation. He glanced at his computer screen. But the petition raises questions about your ability to understand complex financial obligations, phone communications with creditors, written contract comprehension. The bank's legal team says we have to wait for the court. Through the office's glass wall, I could see the main lobby, other customers coming and going, Martha Yates from the feed store, Tom Brennan, who ran the equipment dealership. Both of them glanced at Roger's office. At me, then looked away quick. Small town. Word traveled fast. Roger kept talking. The hearing is scheduled for February 28th. Judge Pemberton. Once he rules, we can move forward, one way or another. One way or another. If the judge sided with Linda, I'd never get that loan. Never get any loan. Couldn't buy equipment, couldn't make improvements, couldn't even replace a broken tractor without someone else's permission. I typed, what if I lose the hearing? Roger's silence was answer enough. The smell of burnt coffee from the break room mixed with floor wax. The fluorescent lights hummed. Vibration I felt more than heard. Everything normal. Everything wrong. I stood to leave. Roger stood too, extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was different, gentler, the way you hold something fragile. I hated it. Marcus arrived on a Wednesday. My sister's boy, 30 years old, sharp as a tack, and the best agricultural lawyer in Des Moines. Also, deaf since birth, like me. We'd always signed at family gatherings, talked about farming and law and everything between, but I hadn't called him just to catch up. He spread the paperwork across my kitchen table like a crime scene. Conservatorship petition, divorce filing, bank correspondence. The Grayson Development envelope Linda had left. His hands flew, fast, angry signing. "This is garbage, Uncle Vern. Look at this date." He jabbed at the conservatorship petition. "She claims you showed signs of diminished capacity starting in November. November, but I've got your bank statements right here. You were managing everything solo. Perfect records. She's lying." I signed back. "Can we prove that in court?" "Depends on the judge." Marcus pulled up something on his laptop. Judge Pemberton, 68 years old, former small-town doctor himself before law school. He's ruled on 8 disability-related cases in the last 5 years. 7 times he sided with medical professionals over family members. My stomach dropped. Marcus wasn't finished. He opened the Grayson Development envelope. Inside was a land appraisal. Professional, detailed, full-color maps showing property lines, soil quality assessments, zoning classifications. The date at the top, January 3rd, 12 days before Linda filed for divorce. "She ordered this appraisal 2 weeks ago," Marcus signed, "before she served you papers, before the conservatorship petition. She's been planning this." I picked up the appraisal. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind of document that costs money to produce. The valuation was right there on page 3, $1.2 million. Marcus flipped to the last page, a draft contract. Grayson Development purchasing 240 acres of farmland. Seller, Dr. Linda Hutchins. Closing date, May 15th, right after spring planting deadline would pass. Right after I'd default on existing loans without new equipment. Right after the farm would be worthless to everyone except developers. The trap was perfect. Bee's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard her knock, never did, but she stood there with a blue Pyrex casserole dish in her hands, steam rising from under the lid. The smell hit me. Sarah's recipe. Chicken, rice, cream of mushroom, the cheese topping that got crispy on the edges. She set it on the table, looked at the paperwork. Her face hardened. She didn't need to sign. I could read her expression. That woman. Marcus kept working through the documents. His face went pale. He signed. "Uncle Vern, the contract. Look at the closing date again, May 15th, but look at the signature line." I looked. The seller line didn't say Linda Hutchins, power of attorney for Vernon Hutchins. It said Linda Hutchins, conservator for Vernon Hutchins, incompetent. She wasn't just trying to take the farm. She was trying to make it legal. Marcus's hands shook as he signed. "If Judge Pemberton grants conservatorship, she controls everything. She can sell the farm without your consent. You'd have no legal standing to stop her. And the timing, she closes the sale right after you miss spring planting, after the farm's already failing, so she can claim she's protecting your assets by selling." The kitchen felt too small, the walls too close. Bee put her hand on my shoulder, warm, steady. Marcus closed his laptop, signed, "We have until February 28th, 1 day before your planting deadline. If we lose in court, you lose everything." Marcus moved into the farmhouse guest room that night, brought 3 boxes of legal files, a printer, and enough determination to make me believe we had a chance. The kitchen table became command central. He spread documents in careful rows, conservatorship petition on the left, divorce filing in the middle, my farm records on the right. Every paper had a purpose. Every piece of evidence told part of the story. Bee arrived at 7 with coffee in a thermos and Sarah's old farm ledgers, 20 years of handwritten entries, my entries, grain purchases, vet bills, equipment repairs, loan payments, every number accurate to the penny. She set them down next to Marcus's laptop, didn't say a word, didn't need to. The coffee was strong and bitter, cheap grocery store brand, the kind Sarah and I used to buy in 5-pound cans. The smell alone was enough to bring back Sunday nights at the same table, her reading numbers out loud while I wrote them down. Both of us too tired to talk much but comfortable in the silence. Marcus picked up the first ledger, flipped through pages. His eyebrows went up. He signed. "These are immaculate. Every expense categorized. Cross-referenced with bank statements. Uncle Vern, this is better record-keeping than half my clients in Des Moines." I signed back. "Sarah taught me. She said if you're going to run a farm, run it like a business." This proves competence. Clear, consistent financial management. He opened his laptop, started typing. "We'll submit these as evidence. Show the judge you've been handling complex finances independently for decades." Bee poured coffee into 3 mugs, sat down heavy in Sarah's old chair. The wood creaked, same sound it had made for 30 years. Marcus kept working, His hands moved between keyboard and signing, fluid and fast. Here's what we're up against. Judge Pemberton respects medical authority. Linda's going to walk in wearing that white coat, use terms like auditory processing deficits and communication barriers. She'll make it sound like you can't possibly understand contracts or manage creditor relationships. I signed, so what do? We make you undeniable. Marcus pulled up a document template. First, we file a response. Point by point, we dismantle her claims. Then we bring witnesses, people who've done business with you for years, farmers, suppliers, the vet, anyone who can testify you're sharp as ever. He paused, looked at me straight. And we need an expert witness, another doctor, someone who can explain to the judge that deaf doesn't equal incompetent. The kitchen got quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the soft sound of Bea stirring sugar into her coffee. Marcus's finger stopped on one line of Linda's petition. He leaned closer, squinted. Then his hands flew. Wait, look at this. He turned the laptop toward me, highlighted a section. Petitioner observed signs of diminished capacity beginning November 2024, including inability to manage telephone communications and confusion regarding written correspondence. Marcus signed. November, she claims she noticed problems in November. But Uncle Vern, when did she start working night shifts at the hospital? I thought back. October, she switched to night rotation in October. So in November, she wasn't even here most days. How could she observe your daily financial management if she was sleeping during the day and working all night? Bea leaned forward, put her coffee down with a soft clink. Marcus kept going, hands fast and fierce. And look at this date. The conservatorship petition claims you missed a phone call from the bank on November 18th, a critical communication about loan terms. He pulled up my phone records on his laptop. But I have your phone logs right here. You didn't miss any calls from the bank in November. In fact, you called them twice, left voicemails, followed up in person. There's even a note in your ledger about the conversation. He tapped the screen. This date is impossible. She's lying, and I can prove it. The county clerk called on Friday afternoon. Marcus answered, then walked over to where I was fixing fence posts in the south pasture. The ground was still frozen hard, making every post hole a battle against ice and rock. He waited until I looked up, then signed. We got a hearing date. I set down the post hole digger. February 28th, 9:00 a.m., Judge Pemberton's chambers. February 28th. I pulled out my phone, opened up the calendar, counted forward, 6 weeks from today, 1 day before March 1st, 1 day before the loan deadline, 1 day before the planting window started closing for good. Marcus saw my face, signed. I know, it's tight, but it's better than nothing. At least we get to present our side before she takes everything. The wind picked up, cutting across the open pasture, cold enough to make my eyes water. I could feel it through my canvas jacket, through the flannel underneath, straight to the bone. Marcus's hands moved again. There's something else. The clerk mentioned Judge Pemberton requested an expedited hearing. He wants this resolved quickly. That could be good for us, less time for Linda to build her case, or it could be bad. He might already have his mind made up. I looked across the pasture. 240 acres of frozen ground. Waiting for spring, waiting for seed, waiting for me to prove I was capable of planting it. One day. If the judge sided with Linda on February 28th, the loan would die on March 1st. No equipment, no planting, no season, no farm. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder, signed, "We'll be ready, I promise." But as I watched him walk back toward the farmhouse, legal briefcase in hand, all I could think was, what if ready wasn't enough? First Baptist's basement smelled like every church basement in America. Burnt coffee, old hymnals, and the faint mustiness of carpet that never quite dried after the last flood. Sunday potluck, after service. The folding tables were covered in casserole dishes, slow cookers, store-bought pies still in their plastic containers. Bea's blue Pyrex dish sat in the center of the main table. Steam rising from the cheese topping, crispy and golden at the edges, Sarah's recipe. The one every woman in Red Oak County had asked for, and Bea had never shared. Linda arrived 20 minutes late, still in her hospital scrubs, navy blue with her name embroidered on the pocket, Dr. Linda Hutchins. She carried a pie from the grocery store, the price sticker still visible on the aluminum tin. The church ladies noticed. Martha Yates elbowed Carol Jensen. Both looked at the store-bought pie, then at Bea's homemade casserole. Small gestures, big meanings. I was loading my plate when Linda walked up to the drink table. 6 women clustered around her immediately. She started talking, animated, concerned. I couldn't read her lips from across the room, but I saw the head tilts, the sympathetic nods, the way the women glanced in my direction. Carol Jensen's hand went to her mouth. Martha Yates shook her head slowly. B appeared at my elbow, signed, "She's telling them you're declining, that you forgot to feed the cows last week, that you left the barn heaters off and nearly froze 3 calves." My jaw tightened. I'd lost exactly 0 calves this winter, and the barn heaters had been running fine until last Tuesday when a breaker tripped, which I'd fixed within an hour of noticing. But the women didn't know that. They just knew Linda was a doctor, a professional, someone who would know these things. Linda's voice rose slightly. I caught fragments. "Can't hear the phone." Safety concern. Before someone gets hurt. B's casserole dish suddenly felt too heavy in my hands. Tom Brennan walked over. Old friend. We'd bought equipment from his dealership for 30 years. He clapped my shoulder, gentle, awkward, and signed one word, tough. Not how are you, not what can I do, just tough, like I was already defeated. Marcus pushed through the crowd. His face was red, hands flying. "She's telling people you're a danger to yourself, that you can't manage the farm safely, that someone needs to step in before—" He stopped mid-sign, looked past me. Clay had just walked in with Linda, together. My son saw me. Our eyes met across the church basement. For a second I thought he might walk over, might sign something, anything. Instead he turned to the coffee urn, poured a cup, stood next to his stepmother like a wall. The church ladies dispersed slowly. But the damage was done. I could feel it in the air, the whispered conversations, the sympathetic glances. The careful distance people kept, like incompetence might be contagious. George Miller from the feed store approached, spoke directly at me, over-enunciating, "Vern, you, doing, okay?" I typed on my phone, "I'm fine." Same as always. He patted my arm. "You let me know if you need anything." Then he walked away before I could respond. B's hand gripped my elbow, tight, furious. She marched me over to where Linda stood holding court. The church ladies scattered like startled birds. B didn't sign, didn't need to. She picked up her blue Pyrex casserole dish, Sarah's recipe, 3 generations of Hutchins family gatherings, and set it down directly in front of Linda's store-bought pie. The contrast was obvious. Homemade versus purchased. Roots versus convenience. Belonging versus outsider. Linda's face flushed. She said something sharp. B just smiled. Cold, dangerous. Then B signed to me, big and clear so everyone could see. "Your farm, your life, your choice, not hers." Half the room was watching now. Tom Brennan, George Miller, the church ladies. Carol Jensen pulled out her phone, taking notes, or texting, spreading the word. The town was splitting. Right down the middle. Right there in the church basement. Marcus didn't come to the farm Monday morning. Or Tuesday. I called his cell twice. No answer. Texted. Nothing. Wednesday afternoon, I drove to town. Found his car parked outside the courthouse. Inside, he was buried in files. Dark circles under his eyes, coffee cups scattered across the library table. When he saw me, he signed, "I've been researching Judge Pemberton." I sat down across from him. His hands moved slowly, tired. 8 disability cases in 5 years. 7 times he ruled in favor of medical professionals. Doctors, nurses, therapists. Over family members, over the person with the disability. He pulled up a case file on his laptop. Last year, farmer in Mills County had a stroke. His daughter, a physician, filed for conservatorship, said he couldn't manage the farm safely anymore. The man's son fought it, brought witnesses, showed profit records, proved his father was still competent. I waited. Judge Pemberton sided with the daughter. Granted full conservatorship. The father died 6 months later, never farmed again. Marcus closed the laptop, rubbed his eyes. "Uncle Vern, if Linda walks into that courtroom in her white coat with her medical degree, using terms like auditory processing deficits and communication barriers, Judge Pemberton is predisposed to believe her, not because he's a bad judge, because he's a former doctor who trusts other doctors." The law library smelled like old paper and lemon furniture polish. Quiet, too quiet. I signed, "So what do we do?" "We make you undeniable. We bring every witness we can find. We show the judge your farm records, your bank statements, your perfect safety record. We prove that deaf doesn't mean incompetent." He paused, hands hovering. "But, Uncle Vern, I need to be honest. The odds aren't good. Pemberton has a pattern, and patterns are hard to break. I drove home in silence. The truck's heater barely worked, blowing lukewarm air that smelled like antifreeze and dust. The roads were still frozen, rutted with ice. At the farm, I found Clay's truck in the driveway. He was sitting in the cab, engine off, just sitting there in the cold. I knocked on the window. He jumped, looked at me through the glass. Finally, he got out. We stood in the driveway, frozen mud between us, 2 feet that might as well have been 2 miles. I signed, "Why are you here?" His hands stayed in his pockets. He spoke out loud, words I couldn't hear, lips I could barely read in the fading afternoon light. I pulled out my phone, typed, "Sign or write? You know better." He took the phone, typed for a long time, then handed it back. "Mom says, if you fight this, I lose my inheritance. She says the legal fees will drain everything, that I should talk you into settling, sign the power of attorney, make it easy. She promised we'd split everything 50-50 if you just cooperate." I read it twice, then looked at my son. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I typed, "Do you believe her?" He took the phone back, stared at the screen for a long time. The light was fading. The wind picked up, rattling the bare branches of the oak tree Sarah and I had planted the year Clay was born. Finally, he typed, "I don't know what to believe anymore." Then he got in his truck and drove away. That night, I sat in the kitchen with Bee's casserole dish, empty now, washed clean, and Sarah's old ledgers. Marcus had said we needed to make me undeniable. But how do you prove you're competent when the whole system is built to assume you're not? Outside, the temperature dropped below zero, the kind of cold that makes the house creak, the kind that freezes the ground solid for months. One day, before the loan deadline, I'd stand in front of a judge who'd already decided that doctors know best. And my own son couldn't decide which side he was on. The text came at 2:47 a.m., Marcus's number, just 2 words, "Barn, now." I pulled on boots and a coat, grabbed the flashlight from the mudroom. The air outside was sharp enough to burn my lungs. February cold, the kind that makes metal brittle and fingers numb in seconds. Marcus was in the calving pen, standing over Daisy. The heifer was down on her side, breathing hard, eyes rolling white. Her water had broken an hour ago, maybe more, but nothing was coming. I knelt beside her, felt her belly, tight, contracting. The calf was stuck. Marcus's face was pale in the flashlight beam. He signed. I didn't know what to do. I heard her thrashing, felt the vibrations through the floor. She's been like this since I got here. I rolled up my sleeves, washed my hands and arms in the bucket of warm water I kept ready for situations like this. The water smelled like iodine and soap. Clinical. Necessary. Then I reached inside. The calf was breech, back legs first instead of front. One hoof caught on this pelvic bone. Every contraction wedged it tighter. I signed to Marcus with one hand. "Watch." I worked by touch. No vision inside. Just feel. The calf's leg, the angle, the resistance. I pushed the hoof back, rotated the calf's body, found the second leg, pulled them together, straightened the angle. Daisy bellowed. The sound was more vibration than noise. I felt it through the floor, through my knees pressed against the straw. Marcus's hands hovered, useless, wanting to help, not knowing how. I guided his hands to the calf's legs, positioned his grip, then signed, "When she pushes, you pull, steady, not hard, steady." The next contraction came. Marcus pulled. The calf moved 3 inches, then stopped. Again. Another 3 inches. The barn smelled like blood and birth fluids and the sweet rot of afterbirth. Marcus's face was green, but he didn't let go. One more contraction, one more pull. The calf slid free in a rush of fluid and membrane. Hit the straw in a wet heap. I grabbed a handful of straw, cleared the calf's nose and mouth, rubbed its chest hard, rough, the way you have to. Nothing. I rubbed harder, squeezed its ribcage, forced air in and out. Marcus's hands were shaking. Signed, "Is it—" The calf gasped, coughed, took a breath, then another. Daisy lifted her head, turned to look at her baby. Instinct kicked in. She started licking, cleaning, bonding. Marcus sat back on his heels. His hands were covered in birth fluids. Blood, mucus. His expensive city clothes were ruined. He looked down at himself, then at me. Signed, "You do this alone?" I nodded. "Every spring, sometimes 5 in one night, sometimes more." His face changed. Understanding settled in like stones dropping into water. He signed slowly. "Linda's petition says you can't manage complex tasks, that your disability makes you a safety risk, that someone needs to supervise you." I looked at the calf, already trying to stand, legs wobbling, mother watching close. Signed back, "You tell that to the judge. Tell him what incompetent looks like." Marcus pulled out his phone, took a photo of the calf, then one of Daisy licking her baby clean. Evidence. Proof. His hands were still shaking when he signed. My fiancée is coming this weekend? Emily. She's never been on a farm. He paused. She's like Linda used to be. City girl. Thinks farming is just planting and harvesting. I waited. I want her to see this. See what you do, what this life actually means. The calf found its feet, stood, wavered, daisy mooed soft and low. A sound I felt more than heard. I signed, bring her, show her everything. Sunday morning, B.A. arrived with a stack of papers and her church directory. She spread them across the kitchen table, which still bore coffee rings from Marcus's all-night legal research sessions. Signatures, she said out loud, then signed when I looked confused. Character witnesses. We need the town to go on record. Marcus looked up from his laptop. What kind of signatures? The kind that say Vern Hutchins is competent, capable, and being railroaded by a gold-digging wife who never fit in here anyway. Bee's hands were sharp when she signed, angry. She pulled out a printed statement. I, the undersigned, have known Vernon Hutchins for 8 years. In my experience, he has demonstrated competent financial management, sound judgment, and responsible farm operations. I do not believe he requires conservatorship. Simple, direct, legal. Marcus read it, nodded. This could work. If we get enough signatures, it shows community support. Character witnesses the judge can't ignore. How many do we need? I signed. B smiled. I'm thinking 100, by next Sunday. Marcus whistled, signed. That's ambitious. This is Red Oak County. We take care of our own. She started making a list. Names, addresses, phone numbers. I'll start with the church ladies, then the feed store, the equipment dealership, every farmer within 20 miles. I signed, half the town thinks Linda's right, that I'm declining. Half the town is wrong. B's jaw was set, and I'm about to prove it. Marcus closed his laptop. There's something else we need to do, something I should have done weeks ago. He pulled up a document, State Medical Board complaint form. Linda's medical practice. I've been asking around. Quietly. There are rumors. Misdiagnoses, poor bedside manner. One woman said Linda prescribed antibiotics for a viral infection. Basic mistake. Another said she spent more time on her phone than examining patients. I signed. You think we can use that? I think if the judge sees that Linda's own professional competence is questionable, he'll think twice about trusting her medical opinion of you. Marcus started filling out the form. It's a long shot. Medical board investigations take months, but if we can file this week, maybe, it rattles her enough to make mistakes. B poured coffee. The smell was strong, burnt at the edges. She'd made it the way Sarah used to. Too much grounds, not enough water. She set a mug in front of me, then signed, We're going to win this. I wanted to believe her. Outside, the afternoon sun was weak and watery, but the icicles on the barn roof had started dripping, tiny drops, barely noticeable. February thaw, still a month away from real spring, but the ice was beginning to crack. Marcus submitted the medical board complaint at 4:17 p.m., hit send, leaned back, signed, Now we wait. B gathered her papers. 100 signature goal. 7 days to do it. As she left, she turned back, signed, Your wife would be proud of you. Sarah, I mean. She always said you were tougher than you looked. The kitchen felt empty after she left. Just me and Marcus and the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at the calendar. February 28th was circled in red. 12 days away. 12 days to prove I wasn't incompetent. 12 days before everything either came together or fell apart. George Miller cornered me at the feed store on Tuesday afternoon. The place smelled like cracked corn and mineral supplements, dust floating in the weak sunlight coming through the front windows. He spoke loud, too loud. Vern, is it true you left the barn heaters off last week? I pulled out my phone, typed, Heaters have been running fine, no issues. That's not what I heard. George glanced at the other customers. Tom Brennan, by the fencing supplies. Carol Jensen's husband picking up chicken feed. Heard you froze 3 calves. Heard they didn't make it. My jaw tightened. I typed, I haven't lost a single calf this season. Who told you that? Doesn't matter who. Point is, people are worried. You're getting older. Maybe it's time to let someone else handle things. Tom Brennan walked over, stood next to George, united front. Vern, nobody's saying you're a bad farmer. But if you can't hear the phone, can't catch problems before they happen. He trailed off, left the implication hanging. I typed, I catch problems fine. My safety record is perfect. 0 losses this winter. This winter. Tom said. But what about next winter? What happens when you miss something important? The feed store got quiet, everyone watching, waiting to see what the deaf farmer would say, how he'd defend himself. I didn't. Just paid for my grain order and left. Outside, Marcus was waiting by my truck. His face was dark, signed, Linda's been calling around, spreading stories. She told George you had a confusion episode last month, forgot to close the barn doors, left the cows out overnight. I signed back, that never happened. I know, but she's a doctor. People believe doctors. He kicked the truck tire, frustrated. She's poisoning the well, making sure that when we walk into court, half the town already thinks you're incompetent. We drove back to the farm in silence. The roads were starting to thaw, creating patches of mud between stretches of ice. The truck slid twice on the curves. At home, Emily was waiting, Marcus's fiancée, petite, dark hair, city clothes that would be ruined within an hour of farm work. She stood by the fence, watching the cows with obvious uncertainty. Marcus introduced us. She signed, slow, careful, beginner's ASL. Nice to meet you. I signed back. Welcome. She smiled, relieved. For the next hour, I showed her the farm, the milking parlor, the calving pens, the feed systems. She asked questions, good questions, not the patronizing kind. She touched the cows, tentative at first, then braver, let them sniff her hands. When we got to the equipment barn, she stopped, stared at the old planter, rusted, half broken, held together with wire and hope. She signed to Marcus, "This is what he's been using?" Marcus nodded. She looked at me, signed slowly. "And they think you're incompetent?" Something in her face, respect maybe, or understanding, made the weight on my chest a little lighter. Thursday evening, I was checking fence posts when headlights swept across the south pasture. Clay's truck. He got out slow, hesitant, walked over to where I was working. We stood in the cold for a full minute, neither of us moving. Finally, he pulled out his phone, held it up so I could see the screen. An audio file, dated February 10th, length 14 minutes, 32 seconds. He pressed play. Of course I couldn't hear it, but Clay's face told me everything. Guilt, shame, resolution. He stopped the file, started typing. I recorded Mom. Her meeting with Grayson Development, February 10th at the diner in Carson. She didn't know I was there. He handed me the phone. Let me read the transcript he'd pulled up. Linda's voice, transcribed. The conservatorship should be granted by March 1st. Judge Pemberton sides with medical professionals. Once I have legal control, I can authorize the sale. Developer's voice. And Mr. Hutchins? Linda. He can't hear us plan this. Perfect, right? By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be done. I get $600,000 up front, the rest at closing. Developer. What about your stepson? His inheritance? Linda. Clay's a sweet kid, but he's not a farmer. Never has been. He'll get over it. Everyone does. I read it twice, then looked at my son. Clay's hands finally came out of his pockets. He signed. Rusty. Uncertain. I'm sorry. I thought if I stayed quiet, stayed on her side, she'd keep her promise. Split everything 50-50, but she was never going to. She was going to take it all. His eyes were red, voice breaking. I could see it in his face, even if I couldn't hear it. He signed again. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to believe she'd... He stopped, collected himself. Marcus needs this, for court. It proves she planned everything. I pulled him into a hug, felt him shake against my shoulder, 40 years old and still my kid, still scared he'd picked the wrong side. When we pulled apart, I signed, "You were protecting yourself. I understand." I should have been protecting you. I shook my head, signed, "You're here now. That's what matters." We walked back to the farmhouse together. Marcus was inside with Emily, reviewing witness statements. When he saw the recording, his whole face changed. He signed fast, excited. "This is it. This proves premeditation, proves she planned to cut Clay out, proves the conservatorship was never about your welfare. It was about control." Emily looked at the transcript, then at me, signed, "She called you deaf like it was a weapon, like it made you less than human." Marcus was already plugging Clay's phone into his laptop, downloading the file, creating backups. "We need to get this transcribed officially, certified, admissible in court." He looked at Clay. "You willing to testify? Tell the judge what you heard?" Clay nodded, signed, "Whatever it takes." Outside, the temperature had climbed above freezing for the first time in weeks. The icicles on the barn roof were dripping steadily now, making puddles in the frozen mud. Not quite spring, but the ice was breaking. Marcus finished the backup, looked at all of us, me, Clay, Emily, signed, "We have 12 days. B's got 94 signatures so far. Clay's recording proves motive. The medical board complaint is active. We're building a case the judge can't ignore." He paused. "But Linda's going to come at us hard. She knows we're getting stronger. Desperate people make dangerous moves." Through the kitchen window, I could see the south pasture, the fence line I'd been repairing, the land my grandfather cleared, the barn my father built, the life Sarah and I created here. 12 days. Either I'd keep it all or lose everything, but for the first time since January, I wasn't fighting alone. 2:18 a.m. I couldn't sleep. The numbers on the bedside clock glowed red in the darkness. Outside, a cold rain had started. Not quite sleet, not quite water, the kind that turns everything to mud. I went downstairs. The kitchen was dark except for the light over the stove. I pulled Sarah's old letters from the drawer where I'd kept them for 14 years. Rubber banded together, yellowed at the edges. The last one she'd written was dated 3 days before she died. Her handwriting shaky from the pain medications. "Vern, don't let them take our home. Clay needs roots. The farm is his inheritance, his history, his future. Promise me you'll fight for it. Not for you, for him, always for him." I read it 4 times. Then I started feeding the letters into the wood stove. One by one, watching the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. If I lost in court, Clay would inherit nothing. The farm would be sold. Linda would take her $600,000 and disappear. Clay would be left with legal bills and resentment and the knowledge that his mother destroyed his father's legacy. But if I fought and won, the town would never forget. They'd remember Clay sided with Linda, at least publicly, at least at first. They'd remember he drove her to meetings, stood silent at the church potluck, let her spread lies about frozen calves. Either way, my son would pay the price for my choices. The letters were half gone when B's voice came from the doorway. "Burning evidence? That's usually the other side's job." I hadn't heard her come in, never did. She walked over, took the remaining letters from my hands, pulled them back from the stove's heat, signed, "What are you doing?" I typed on my phone, hands shaking. If I lose, Clay gets nothing. If I win, the town never forgives him. Either way, I've failed Sarah's promise. B read it, set the phone down hard on the counter. She went to the cupboard, pulled out her blue Pyrex casserole dish, the one she'd brought to the church potluck, the one Sarah had used for 40 years of family dinners, set it on the table between us. Then she signed, big and fierce. "Your wife didn't ask you to protect Clay from consequences. She asked you to fight for what's right. There's a difference." I signed back. "He's my son. And that farm is his birthright. You think Sarah would want you to hand it over to a woman who called you incompetent, who planned to steal it before the ink dried on your marriage license?" The rain picked up outside. I could feel the vibrations through the floorboards. Spring rain, the kind that melts the last of the ice. B kept signing. "Clay made his choices. He's 40 years old. He stood with her because he thought it was easier, thought he could avoid the hard truth. But you know what? He came back. He brought you that recording. He's trying to make it right." She picked up Sarah's letters, smoothed them out, handed them back to me. "Don't burn these. Don't erase her. She wanted you to fight. Not for revenge, not for pride, for the truth." I looked at the casserole dish. Blue Pyrex. 3 generations old. A simple thing, but it meant home, meant roots, meant the kind of love that gets baked into recipes and passed down through decades. B signed one more time. "The town will forgive Clay, eventually, but they'll never forgive you if you quit." She left. The casserole dish stayed on the table. I put Sarah's remaining letters back in the drawer, didn't burn them, didn't read them again. Outside, the rain was washing away the last of February's ice. Sunday morning. First Baptist's basement was packed. More people than usual. Word had spread about B's signature campaign. The folding tables were set up like always. Casseroles and slow cookers and church lady desserts. B's blue Pyrex dish sat in the center, steam rising, Sarah's recipe. The smell, chicken, mushroom soup, cheese topping, filled the whole room. B stood at the head table with a clipboard, 127 signatures. She'd beaten her goal by 27. People lined up to sign. George Miller from the feed store, Tom Brennan from the equipment dealership, Carol Jensen and half the church ladies who'd been whispering 2 weeks ago. Martha Yates signed, then looked right at me. Signed, slow, uncertain, but sincere. "I'm sorry, I should have asked you instead of listening to gossip." The church ladies clustered around. More signatures, more apologies, the tide was turning. Marcus stood by the coffee urn with Emily. She was learning to pour coffee one-handed so she could sign with the other. City girl adapting, trying. Then Linda walked in. Alone this time. No Clay, no scrubs, just a tired woman in jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. She stopped when she saw the crowd, saw B's clipboard, saw the signatures. Her face went pale. She walked to the coffee table, poured a cup with shaking hands. The room went quiet, everyone watching. That's when I noticed Janet Stillwater standing by the bulletin board, Judge Pemberton's secretary, the deaf woman who worked at the courthouse. She caught my eye, signed, small, discreet. Your paperwork came through Friday, counter petition filed, medical board complaint active, everything's in order. Then she signed something else, something that made my stomach drop. Judge requested expedited hearing. He wants this resolved, one way or another. Linda saw us signing, saw Janet. Recognition crossed her face. She knew who Janet was, knew what it meant that the judge's deaf secretary was here, at this church, supporting me. Linda set down her coffee cup, walked out without a word. Marcus appeared at my elbow, signed. Did you see her face? She knows she's losing. But I wasn't so sure. Desperate people make dangerous moves, and we had 5 days until court. B folded up her clipboard. 127 signatures, character witnesses, proof that the town believed in me. But would it be enough to change a judge's mind? Emily brought me a plate, B's casserole, still warm, the cheese topping crispy at the edges just like Sarah used to make it. She signed, Marcus told me what this dish means, your wife's recipe. 3 generations, that's legacy. That's what you're fighting for. I ate slowly. The casserole tasted exactly like memory, like Sunday dinners and family and home. Through the basement window, I could see the parking lot, puddles of melted snow, brown grass starting to show through, the earth waking up. Janet Stillwater signed to me on her way out. Good luck Thursday, you'll need it. Thursday, February 28th, 5 days away. The ground outside was finally soft enough to plant if I still had a farm to plant it on. The Red Oak County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and old wood. Marble steps outside, brass door handles worn smooth by 100 years of hands. Inside, the hallways echoed, sound bouncing off hard surfaces. I felt every footstep through the floor. Judge Pemberton's chambers were on the second floor. Wood paneling, leather chairs, law books lining the walls like soldiers at attention. Linda sat on the left side with her lawyer, expensive suit from Des Moines, briefcase that probably cost more than a month's grain bill. She wore her white coat, Dr. Linda Hutchins embroidered on the pocket in navy thread, a calculated choice. I sat on the right with Marcus, B behind us in the gallery, Clay next to her, Emily beside him. Janet Stillwater, Judge Pemberton's secretary, sat in the back corner, hands folded in her lap. The judge entered at 9:02 a.m., 68 years old, former doctor, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain. He looked at Linda first, recognition, professional courtesy, one doctor to another. Then he looked at me. I couldn't read his expression. The court reporter set up her machine. The bailiff announced the case. Petition for conservatorship, Linda Hutchins versus Vernon Hutchins. Linda's lawyer stood, smooth voice, confident. I couldn't hear the words, but Marcus translated in quick signs beside me. Your Honor, Dr. Hutchins is here, out of concern for her husband's welfare. Mr. Hutchins is 62 years old and profoundly deaf. He cannot hear telephone communications from creditors, cannot respond to emergency calls, cannot manage complex financial negotiations without assistance. Dr. Hutchins has observed a pattern of declining capacity over the past several months, missed appointments, confusion regarding written contracts, safety incidents on the farm. The lawyer pulled out documents, medical terminology, phrases like auditory processing deficits, and communication barriers. Judge Pemberton took notes, nodded along. Linda's lawyer continued, Most concerning, Your Honor, is Mr. Hutchins's inability to recognize his own limitations. He continues to operate a 240-acre dairy farm alone, managing livestock, heavy equipment, financial obligations, all without the sensory capacity to ensure safety and sound judgment. The lawyer sat down, satisfied. Judge Pemberton looked at me. Mr. Hutchins, do you have representation? Marcus stood. Yes, Your Honor. Marcus Chen, agricultural law, representing my uncle Vernon Hutchins. Proceed. Marcus opened his briefcase, pulled out the first piece of evidence, my farm ledgers, Sarah's handwriting on the early pages, mine one for the last 14 years. Your Honor, these ledgers document 20 years of financial management, every expense categorized, every income source tracked, cross-referenced with bank statements, 0 discrepancies, 0 missed payments, 0 defaults. He handed them to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. Judge Pemberton flipped through pages. His eyebrows went up slightly. Marcus continued. Dr. Hutchins claims my uncle exhibits confusion regarding written contracts. But these records show a man who understands complex financial planning better than most hearing individuals. He's managed equipment loans, feed contracts, veterinary services, insurance policies, all without error. He pulled out the next document, my reading glasses, still in their case. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit B, Mr. Hutchins's reading glasses. On January 15th, when Dr. Hutchins served the conservatorship petition, these glasses were on the kitchen table, 10 inches from her left hand. My uncle needed them to read the fine print on the legal documents. Dr. Hutchins deliberately kept them out of his reach. Linda's lawyer objected. Speculation, Your Honor. It's documented, Marcus said. He pulled out Clay's affidavit. Mr. Hutchins's son witnessed the entire incident. Hutchins slid the glasses away when my uncle reached for them. This wasn't about protecting a vulnerable person. It was about creating vulnerability where none existed. Judge Pemberton looked at Linda, then at the glasses. Marcus pressed on. Exhibit C, Dr. Hutchins claims she observed declining capacity beginning in November 2024, but in November she was working night shifts at Regional Medical. She wasn't home during the day to observe anything. My uncle has phone logs, bank records, and witness statements proving he managed all farm operations independently that entire month. He slid the forged document across the table, the November claim highlighted. Your Honor, this date is impossible. Dr. Hutchins fabricated her timeline to support the conservatorship petition. Linda's lawyer stood up. Objection. Counsel is accusing my client of fraud without... I have proof. Marcus pulled out Clay's phone. Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording dated February 10th. A conversation between Dr. Hutchins and a representative from Grayson Development Corporation. The judge leaned forward. Play it. Marcus connected the phone to the courtroom's sound system. Everyone else could hear it. I watched their faces instead. Linda went pale. Her lawyer's jaw tightened. The judge's expression darkened with every passing second. 14 minutes, and 32 seconds later, the recording ended. Marcus signed the key phrases for me. $600,000 up front. He can't hear us plan this. Perfect, right? Clay will get over it. Everyone does. Judge Pemberton removed his reading glasses, cleaned them slowly, put them back on. Dr. Hutchins, did you meet with Grayson Development on February 10th? Linda's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client invokes her Fifth Amendment. Answer the question, Dr. Hutchins. Linda's voice was barely a whisper. I saw her lips move. Yes. And you discussed selling the farm without your husband's knowledge or consent? Silence. Answer the question. Yes. The judge closed the file folder in front of him. The sound, a sharp crack, vibrated through the bench. This petition is denied. Dr. Hutchins, you'll be hearing from the Bar Association about this fraudulent filing. Mr. Hutchins, your accounts will be unfrozen within the hour. You are free to conduct your financial affairs without restriction. He stood. Everyone stood. Court was over. We were in the hallway when Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then at me. Signed, State Medical Board. Linda's hearing is scheduled for next week. Formal investigation into 4 malpractice complaints. Through the courthouse windows, I could see the first real spring rain. Not cold, not ice, just water washing the streets clean. Linda walked past us, alone. Her lawyer had already left. She looked smaller somehow, defeated. She stopped, looked at me. Her lips moved. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Just watched her walk down the marble steps and out into the rain. Clay appeared at my elbow, signed, Did we win? Marcus answered, We won. B pushed through the courthouse doors, signatures still clutched in her hand. She'd never needed to present them. The recording had been enough, but she'd gotten them anyway. One of 27 people who believed in me. Emily signed to me. What happens now? I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app. The loan application, frozen since January 15th, was marked approved in green letters, $47,000, equipment loan, spring planter. I looked at the date, February 28th. Tomorrow is March 1st, the deadline, the last possible day to order equipment and still make the planting window. But I'd made it. Marcus signed. We need to celebrate. Dinner, my treat. I shook my head. Signed, I need to make a phone call. Janet Stillwater was standing by the courthouse doors, waiting. When I approached, she signed, Judge Pemberton wanted me to tell you something, off the record. I waited. He said he's ruled for doctors in disability cases before. Said he's watched competent people get pushed aside by family members who think they know better. He said your ledgers reminded him why he became a lawyer in the first place. To protect people who can protect themselves, they just need someone to see them. She smiled, then signed. Your paperwork never got delayed. I made sure of it. I signed back. Thank you. She nodded, disappeared into the courthouse. Outside, the rain was warm. Spring rain, the kind that makes things grow. Clay stood beside me on the courthouse steps. We watched the rain together, father and son, not saying anything, not needing to. Finally, he signed. I'm sorry I doubted you. I signed back. You came back. That's what matters. Marcus and Emily joined us. B2, all of us standing in the rain like idiots, but nobody moved to leave. Because we'd won. Not just the case, but something bigger. The right to be seen, the right to be heard, even when you can't hear, the right to fight for what's yours. The bank manager called at 10:47 a.m. on March 1st. Marcus translated the conversation in quick signs. Loan approved, funds available immediately, equipment order could be processed today. By noon, I was at Tom Brennan's dealership signing paperwork for the new John Deere planter. Top of the line. GPS guided. The kind that could cover 240 acres in 3 days instead of 10. Tom shook my hand, held it a second longer than necessary. I'm sorry, Vern, for doubting you, for listening to gossip instead of asking. I typed on my phone. You came around. That's what counts. He nodded. Delivery's scheduled for dawn tomorrow. I'll bring it myself. Clay was waiting by my truck. He'd taken the day off work. First time in months he'd come to the farm during daylight hours. We drove home in comfortable silence. The roads were clear now, no ice, no frozen ruts, just mud and the smell of earth waking up. At the farmhouse, Bea was in the kitchen. The blue Pyrex casserole dish sat on the stove, empty but freshly washed. She was teaching Emily how to make Sarah's recipe. 3 cups of cooked chicken, Bea said out loud, then signed for me. Shredded, not cubed. That's the secret. Sarah always said cubed chicken was lazy cooking. Emily carefully measured cream of mushroom soup. Her hands were flour-dusted. She was taking this seriously, learning the language of the farm, one recipe at a time. Marcus appeared in the doorway, signed. I just got off the phone with the state medical board. Linda's investigation is official. 4 complaints, including 1 missed cancer diagnosis that resulted in delayed treatment. I signed back. Will she lose her license? Probably suspended. Maybe permanently, depending on what they find. He paused. She's leaving Red Oak County. Took a job at an urgent care clinic in Des Moines. Starting next week. Clay looked up from the table where he was sorting through mail. She called me this morning, asked if I wanted to stay in touch. We all waited. I told her I needed time. Maybe someday, but not now. Bea patted his shoulder, didn't say anything, didn't need to. The casserole went into the oven. Emily set the timer, then she signed to me. Marcus says you're teaching him to run the farm, that someday this might be ours. I looked at Marcus. He signed. If you'll have us. Not now, but eventually, when you're ready. The kitchen smelled like home, like Sarah's Sunday dinners, like 40 years of memories baked into Pyrex and passed down through generations. I signed, your children will farm this land. Emily's eyes got wet. Marcus put his arm around her. Through the window, I could see the south pasture, the fence line I'd repaired in January, the barn my father built, the land my grandfather cleared, still standing, still mine. May 1st arrived with soft golden sunlight and the smell of warm soil. The new John Deere sat in the equipment barn, red paint gleaming. I'd spent the last 8 weeks planting, 240 acres finished with 3 days to spare, every seed in the ground, every row straight as a prayer. Marcus and Emily came out for the weekend. They'd set a wedding date. October, after harvest, small ceremony, right here on the farm. Bea arrived with the blue Pyrex dish, still warm, still perfect. We ate lunch at the kitchen table. The same oak table where Sarah and I used to do the books, where Linda had spread her legal papers, where Marcus had built our defense. Clay was there too. He'd been coming by every Sunday, learning the farm operations again, remembering what he'd forgotten during the years he'd tried to be something other than a farmer's son. After lunch, Emily asked Bea to write down the casserole recipe. Bea smiled, shook her head, signed. You don't write this recipe down. You learn it by doing, by standing next to someone who loves you and watching their hands. That's how Sarah taught me. That's how I'm teaching you. So Emily stood at the stove, Bea beside her, measuring by feel, not cups, adding cheese until it looked right. learning the language of legacy, one ingredient at a time. I walked out to the south pasture. The ground was soft under my boots. The hay was coming in thick and green. First cutting would be ready in 2 weeks. The cows grazed peacefully. Bessie looked up when I approached, let me scratch behind her ears. She'd calved successfully in March, a healthy heifer we named Hope. Marcus joined me at the fence, signed, "You did it, kept the farm, kept your promise to Sarah." I signed back. We did it, all of us. He looked across the pasture. The land stretched out green and alive. 3 generations of Hutchins' sweat and sacrifice. 4 generations soon. "What happens now?" he signed. I smiled. Signed, "Now we farm." The sun was warm on my face. The earth smelled sweet. Somewhere in the barn, I felt the vibration of the tractor engine, Clay checking the oil, getting ready for evening chores. Inside the farmhouse, Bee's blue Pyrex casserole dish sat on the table. Empty now, but still warm, still home. People ask me sometimes if I hate her. I don't. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on the cows. Linda got what she wanted, a fresh start, just not the kind she planned. Last I heard, she's working urgent care in Des Moines, paying down legal fees and medical board fines. Her license was suspended for 18 months. She'll get it back, probably. People usually do, once they've paid their dues. Clay visits once a month now. We don't talk about his stepmother. We talk about the calves, the hay yields, his daughter who's learning to sign. She's 4, calls me Grandpa Vern, makes the sign by tapping her temple, then her heart. Smart. Love. I taught her that. Marcus brought Emily out last Sunday. Bee taught her how to make Sarah's casserole, the one in the blue Pyrex dish. 4 generations of Hutchins women have used that recipe. Now it'll be 5. Emily's hands moved careful and sure, measuring by feel instead of cups. Learning the language of legacy, one dish at a time. The thing about farming is you can't rush spring. Ground thaws when it's ready. Seeds sprout on their own schedule. You just prepare the soil, plant at the right time, and trust the process. Same with people, I guess. Linda thought she could skip the work and harvest the profit, but legacy isn't something you buy with developer money. It's something you earn with 40 years of 4:30 a.m. milkings, with calves born in snowstorms, with holding your dying wife's hand and promising to keep the land alive for your son, with fighting when the world tells you you're too old, too deaf, too broken to matter. The hay smells different in May, sweet and green, like hope tastes. The new John Deere runs quieter than the old one, but I feel the engine's vibration through the steering wheel. Just fine. Marcus is handling the legal work to transfer the deed into a family trust. Clay's name is on it, his daughter's name too, Emily's, when she and Marcus marry in October. This morning, I watched the sun come up over the east pasture, same as I have for 40 years. The cows were waiting at the barn door, breath steaming in the cool morning air. Bessie and her calf Hope standing together, patient, rusting. The land was ready, the season was right, and for the first time since January, my hands were steady. I opened the barn doors. The fluorescent lights hummed, that familiar vibration through my boots. The smell of silage and warm animal musk filled the air. Routine, peace, home. Through the kitchen window I could see Bee's blue Pyrex dish on the table. Still there from Sunday dinner, still warm with memory. 3 generations old, soon to be 4. Spring came, just like I knew it would.